Hey guys, JamesMCD Reviews here. Welcome to a sort of TVlog cinematic bucket list combo pack. Today we're going to be talking about Percy Jackson and the Olympians. This is the new streaming show on Disney Plus based off of the popular novels by Rick Riordan and is about 12-year-old Percy Jackson, who is just an average kid with dyslexia and ADHD who discovers not only that gods are real, but that he is the demigod and son of Poseidon, who now has to go on a quest to retrieve Zeus's stolen lightning bolt, save his mom, and stop war from breaking out among the gods. Now, I remember reading the first couple books in this series when I was in middle school. I don't know if I ever finished all of them. I think I got maybe a little bit of ways away through the third one. And then just fell out of it. Not because I didn't like it, but just because I wasn't much of a reader back then. But I remember really liking the series, but it has been several years since I've read it, and I don't remember a lot of it. So I'm gonna avoid drawing comparisons from the books in order to explain, what works about the show as an adaptation, because why try to draw comparisons to something that I don't have the strongest memories of. I did rewatch the 2010 Lightning Thief movie, so just so I had something to compare it to. So I will kind of be jumping back and forth between my thoughts on the movie and my thoughts on the show and how the two compare and everything like that. So even though at a surface level both the movie and the show are practically the same story, they are executed very differently. There are things about how they're structured and how they're paced that are very differently. There are elements that both do better than the other, and I don't know that I can really strongly say that one is a better adaptation than the other. In terms of the characters, the show definitely does some better than others. The biggest one, for example, is Luke. In the movie, when Luke shows up, you automatically know that he's gonna be the bad guy and he's gonna betray them, and it just feels so unnatural and just forced just because they needed a twist villain. Whereas in the show, they actually flesh Luke out and they give him a proper backstory and they flesh out his connection with the other characters, and him and Percy's friendship comes about a lot more naturally, so that when he does betray them, not to say that it's not shocking, but you didn't automatically see it coming. Whereas in the movie, the minute he shows up, you're oh, bad guy. They give Sally a little bit more to do. They give her a lot of flashbacks, giving young Percy pep talks and basically explaining his family history and teaching him about Greek mythology and everything like that. I do think that the abusive relationship depicted in the movie was a little bit more dramatic and compelling and gave kind of a more tragic example of why she couldn't leave. Whereas in the show, it seems like she's got everything under control and she's pretty comfortable. It just she's just living with an annoying son of a bitch. Grover gets a lot more screen time and a lot more development, which is kind of a blessing and a curse. On the one hand, he does get a lot more of a compelling sort of arc and a lot more to do as sort of the protector, and he has kind of a naive innocence about him, but also sort of that he's smarter than he's letting on and everything like that. But on the other hand, he does end up kind of in a lot of really rough situations and kind of has to get saved a lot, which can get kind of old after a while. The casts across both versions were pretty solid, and there are definitely some standouts in both versions. Having Pierce Brosnan as Chiron in the movie was a really good choice. It's sad that this is probably one of the last roles that Lance Reddick is in for the TV show, because he plays Zeus, but it was really cool seeing him at least one more time. I think the trio of kids in both versions are pretty solid, although the first 3 episodes of the TV series, they are kind of at each other's throats, which it gets kind of old and you're kind of wondering aren't they supposed to be friends at some point? But it does they do lay off of each other eventually, and it becomes really cool watching them. One thing that I think the movie definitely does better, and you might agree or disagree depending on what you're looking for, is just sort of the structure and overall pacing. From what I understand, the show is trying to be a lot more closer to the events of the book, and I think even the author is credited as like a writer or producer. And so from what I understand, there are a lot of things like added back into the show from the books that were cut out of the movie. A lot of characters that are brought back, a lot of like sort of set pieces that are done in the show that weren't done in the movie. And some of these things work better than others. I think the introduction of Ares, who I don't think was in the movie, having him there and acting as sort of an overarching villain for the series and even further going, I think that was really cool. I like the performance. I like the character. I think he's really interesting. The conversation that he has with Grover in the diner and everything like that was really interesting. But I think like structurally and like pacing wise, I think I prefer the movie. Like the show is 8 episodes long and each episode is about 40 minutes. And it's a lot of talking. It's a lot of exposition and like, whereas with the movie, which I get it's very much 2 different mediums, and with the movie they're pressed for time, so they kind of have to be constantly on the move. But I kind of prefer that better as opposed to, you know, them just kind of walking and talking. And even when they do get to a really cool set piece, they don't really do a whole lot with it. Like a lot of the set pieces where you think there would be some really cool action, like they aren't very well like directed or edited, and there isn't really that sense of tension, especially because they already kind of know what's going on, but they just decide to head straight into danger anyway. Like when they're at Medusa's like garden emporium or whatever, they already know that Medusa is the one there and she's probably going to try and trick them, but they still go in anyway, acting all smug and everything like that. And they do that a lot in the show. Like the scene of the Fury trying to get to them on the bus, like isn't super suspenseful because like of how slowly paced it is. The scene of them like in the waterbed place, which I believe was put back in from the book, you know, is supposed to be like a really pivotal, like tense moment, and it just really isn't. And for a series that's like primarily targeted towards like kids and tweens and is very like action oriented, the action in this isn't all that impressive. Like, I get it's a TV budget versus a movie budget, but it's like every time that it looks like they're gonna do a cool action scene or an action set piece, like it kind of is just very half-heartedly done. Like maybe they just didn't have the room or the budget to do what they wanted, and maybe they can, like, depending on how successful this is, which I don't know what the reception is to this, but depending on if this does well, like maybe they can improve on that in the second season. But yeah, the action in the series was kind of underwhelming versus the action in the movie, which, well, yeah, like there are some scenes and some VFX shots that are kind of dodgy, but they're at least trying a little bit harder, and they want to, you know, give you a much grander adventure and showcase all these things on a big screen rather than just sort of hint at them. There's also a few scenes, like even just the non-action scenes, that are just structured really odd. Like the scene where they're at the museum, like it just feels so like rushed and like weirdly paced, and it doesn't seem like natural at all. Whereas everything in the movie like felt very naturally flowing, like their progression from this point to this point to this point, you know, made a lot more sense. But yeah, ultimately, I don't think that either version is like the perfect adaptation of this story. And I mean, like I said, I haven't read the books in years, so I probably wouldn't be able to accurately say which one is anyway. But just in terms of like which one I personally prefer, I'd probably be more likely to rewatch the movie before I rewatch the show. But that's also not to say that the show is like 100% bad either. I think it's just fine. Like, it's a thing that exists. There are things that work about it. There are some things that it does pretty well, mixed in with a lot of things that probably could have been improved upon. But I mean, regardless, it is getting renewed for a second season, so maybe they'll listen to a lot of the feedback and they'll make those improvements where necessary. But yeah, I mean, I'd be curious for you guys to let me know which version you prefer and what you think the movie did right versus the show and vice versa. But going to my ranking, I'd probably give both versions about the same. I think I give them a 3 out of 5. They're ultimately fine. I think, like I said, the movie just has that edge over the show just because of how it's structured and paced. But they're both ultimately about the same level of quality. But anyway, that does it for this video. Let me know in the comments what you thought of Percy Jackson and the Olympians. Do you like it? Do you hate it? How do you think it stacks up in comparison to the book? And which do you think did this story more justice, the movie or the show? Let me know that stuff down below. I've got more videos coming real soon, but until then, be sure to like, subscribe, ring the notification bell so you can stay updated on when I'm posting. Follow me on my social media, subscribe to my main channel. Everything you need to know will be in the description. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you later.